Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for March 8th, 2022. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. And that's actually what we're going to talk about today. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. We are also streaming live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start, as we usually do, by recapping last week's weekly tittle, which was called Help is on its Way. The assignment was to evaluate whether you could benefit from enlisting an organizing helper or sharing your help with someone else. We'd like to hear from our participants in Zoom and Facebook. Who has tittle progress to report this week? Please let us know in the comments. YouTube viewer Lisa shared this comment. Asking for people help is hard sometimes. They move faster than I do, which means it's hard to work together since my balance and reaction time in tight spaces is poor. And Darlene, also on YouTube, had this to say. One reason some people don't ask for help is that they're afraid that the helper will insist on doing everything their own way, making decisions that seem right to the helper, but not taking into account the wishes of the person being helped. Or in other words, they're afraid asking for help will mean they're giving up control. I think the only reason my parents allow us to help at all is that I continually say, I'll help, but you will have the final say on what we do and what you keep or get rid of.
I read all those comments to be, these are versions of I'm afraid or nervous about asking for help. And I think, everybody that has to contemplate that they need to ask for help hits up against that bar at some point. Like, this is a barrier because I'm afraid that it's not going to go well. And so it's why I say you want to pick your friends that are like, you want the nice friends, not the judgmental friends. You want the kind friends, not the, chargy, take charge, run around, steer the group friends, because it needs to be somebody that's comfortable with taking your direction and accepting the decisions that you make, even though they wouldn't do it that way, or they wouldn't think about it that way. They need to be able to acknowledge and allow your point of view and how you feel about it. So it is the challenge of asking for help, but we all know that at some point we're going to need to do it. So I guess you got to use your best judgment and try it and see how it goes. And if it doesn't go well, then you can learn from your mistake and pick another person instead.
Okay, CJ shared this on the tittle. CJ said, to relieve the stress of trying to cram a long list of projects into every visit, I proposed to my mom the option of hiring a local NAPO pro to help her on a regular basis in between my trips from out of state. But she would simply rather that I come in person more often. Well, yeah.
Well, sure.
However, before any traveling, I need to be able to let someone come in to care for the cats and plants. So I focused on my own clutter as if I was helping someone else while listening to the Clutter podcast for cheerleading, and cleared up the entire front entry and stairway. Yay.
Yay. That's awesome. Good job.
I also decided to hire help for myself, not to organize, but to complete some house repairs that were blocking further progress. Well, the repairman took one look and said that he can't do anything until after I clean up and dump all this trash.
Oh,
sigh.
God.
0 for 2 on the tittle of giving and receiving help, but at least the attempt at it led me to a big win in my decluttering.
That's good. And you can try a different handy person. Maybe he just is a little overwhelmed about working in the environment where he needs to work. maybe you can dial it back a little bit more around where the repair needs to be made, and then try another person and see if they're willing to work with what you've got done.
Susan reported, I used the services of professional organizer for several sessions before the whole pandemic began. I got so much accomplished. And Deborah shared, I tell people that I can do it with them, but I can't do it for them. Their house, their rules, but I am not there to be a cleaner.
Yeah. And cleaning isn't usually the problem, right? Decluttering is not a cleaning problem. Decluttering is a stuff problem. And I want to circle back and say one thing about the person who is flying to help her mother. You might try on one of your trips out there to work that you have the NAPA organizer come and be there with you while you're there, so that your mother can experience the helper without feeling threatened by doing it alone. And she may find that she likes the person and she likes how it goes, and that she'd be more willing to have that person come back, having met her and experienced her in a safe way. You might consider that. I know, every mother wants you to come home more, and it's expensive and it's difficult and it's a challenge for scheduling and all of those things. And so you have to take care of yourself and come when you're willing, but you can negotiate with her a little bit and say, hey, while I'm here, let's call an organizer to come and help us and see if she can't help us do a better job, do this more efficiently, whatever. Just any excuse to get her to come in while you're there and meet your mom and work with her. And maybe find out that it would be fun to have that company, even though it's not you and your company, but you can come another time and be helpful.
Jane said, last week's tittle motivated me to ask a neighbor for help getting a large item down in the garage to get it donated. In exchange, she asked me to help with one small task at her house. It was great that this tittle was mutually beneficial.
That is great. How wonderful. And if you hadn't asked, you wouldn't have gotten it done. I'm so glad. And now you feel like you guys can both each ask again, right? Like maybe you do one thing every week that you need help with or something. And then you get to interact with somebody and have a good time and help each other out. That's awesome.
And Kara said, I helped a friend move into a new apartment. I remembered to keep my mouth shut. If I got stuck, I just picked up and moved empty bags and boxes. I put like with like and separated out duplicates in the kitchen, and he was willing to let the extras go. I did not say, don't you think you have too many coffee mugs?
Like, what the hell with the coffee mugs, brother man? Come on. See, that's very smart. And you were practicing being the helper person. He gets to make the choice. It's his stuff, right? So if he wants 457 mugs, he just has to live with that decision. If you were able to let him, help him send some things on the way, good for you. And good for you that you stepped up to help and, had a successful experience being useful for him. That's awesome.
Susan said, I helped a friend who had some shelves she was parting with since she and her husband are getting divorced. We borrowed a box truck to move the shelves to my garage. However, she spent a lot of time negotiating with her soon-to-be ex-husband and tried me to get additional things. I think she meant to say. Some I said yes to. Some I thought I would have time to change my mind and drop them off at the Salvation Army with the box truck later that day, but we ran out of time. What I thought would take 3 hours took 8 hours. Is your suggestion next time to tell my friend I only have 3 hours to help her so that she makes better use of the time?
Yeah. And I would also say that if the negotiating about the stuff is happening while you're standing there, if she's having that conversation with the husband, and that's churning up some of the time, right? And so I would suggest that she run her choices by the husband, soon to be ex, before you get there, so that they can have those conversations and those decisions can be made before you show up to help. And then I would absolutely set a time frame for if you think you can only manage for 4 hours or 3 hours before you're sort of burned up all of your energy, then I would create, yes, I can help between here and here, but I have an imaginary scheduled event to go to And therefore my cutoff time is I got to leave by 5 in order to go home and get ready to go to dinner with fill in the blank. And so I can't stay longer than that. And if it doesn't get done, then, she's got to manage her time as well. So you agree on what you're willing to give away in terms of your time, and then create a way to stick to it. That isn't, oh my gosh, you're driving me crazy, I can't take it anymore, I'm leaving. You want to be able to say, I can work from noon till 3, and then I have something to do at 4:30 and I have to go home and get ready. So they know that there's a deadline on the other end, which also helps them focus a little bit. They know that they're going to lose the help at a certain point, and asking her to have discussions about stuff before you get there, which means that you don't spend the time standing around while they discuss it and come to a conclusion before you can do something. I think those two things would be helpful.
Okay, one more about this, and then we should get on to our next, our main topic. Nan said, I made the mistake of asking my sister to help me work in the basement. Although she is very non-judgmental and kind, she has a low tolerance for recycling and or cleaning up things that don't belong in the dump, in my opinion. Although we are close, I won't ask for her help again. In the 2+ years I've been paring down, I've tossed very little. Most items I've been able to spiff up and donate to our local Yokefellow ministry. They have been overjoyed to have my cast-offs. And that kind of relates to one of the points we made last week was, even if it's someone you love dearly and enjoy spending every minute with in any other context, if your values don't quite mesh, then they may not be a great fit.
Yeah, exactly. And you may figure out a way to have her come and help and not have her participate in the part of cleaning up for donation. Like maybe you just have her make a stack of things that you're going to go back and clean and donate later. You can have her put them in boxes or whatever, and then you can clean and donate as you will in your own time frame, and not try to do that part of the job while she's present. If she can help you with the other stuff and you guys can make some headway, then you can dump the recycling in one pile, you can dump the things that are going to be cleaned and donated in another pile, and don't have her do any of that work beyond there, and do that part of the job when she's not present. Then she can continue to help you in the other areas that she's okay with, and you can still spend some time with your sister. But yeah, what Ed said, sometimes, yeah, it doesn't, jive, and then it makes it harder.
Okay, I said that was the last comment on the topic of help, but there's a really
good another one.
One really good one I want to share from Samudra. People will also, with the best intentions, commit to more than they can do for you.
Yes.
And it is incumbent on the helpee to be realistic and reasonable.
Yeah, and not burn out your friend. Yeah. And not make it so painful that they're not willing to come and help another time. Like part of that is true too. If you are desperate for help and you get somebody to come and then you just like suck them dry until they're passed out and they feel like they've been run over by a truck, they're not likely to come back. So part of it is being realistic about what you can get done, and recognizing that the person that hasn't been working on the decluttering project probably doesn't have a good sense of the time that's involved. So they think that they can help you get it done, and they don't realize that they're committing to 17 weeks of 12 hours a day. And so that, recognizing that your perception of how much time it's going to take is much clearer than theirs, then you can just say, will you come and work with me for 3 hours? And not, will you come and help me declutter my house? Because then they're going to feel compelled to stay longer than they feel comfortable. Find out what their physical limitation is when they run out of steam, and take their 2 hours or their 3 hours that they have, and then send them home. Tell them you're tired and you need to take a break, and thank you so much, and send them on their way. And then you can keep working if you feel like it. But, definitely monitor your helper's commitment because they're probably not going to realize what they're really signing up for at this point.
Yeah, and they may feel like they're disappointing you by bailing when they run out of steam. And
yeah, exactly.
you need to make clear that they're not. They've already helped.
And every man hour that they put in is 1 man hour that you do not have to put in. And so it's whether they give you an hour or 12 or 50, every hour is one less you have to do. So you just got to take it and run.
Okay, let's get to our main topic. Creating a home that supports the life you love is what organizing is all about. But if you're working to clear a backlog and also to cultivate habits to reduce future clutter, it can be hard to find the time and energy for much else. Today, Gayle is going to suggest some strategies to balance the competing priorities of clearing clutter and enjoying your best life.
I have to say myself, I'm currently juggling a lot of balls right now. I'm working very hard to set priorities and make sure the most important stuff gets done, like my cat sitting job this week. But I still have to manage the work group that's planning 2023's conference, and I still have to get groceries in the house, and I still need to get to my client appointments on time. In that environment, some things have to wait because I also need to sleep every night. Here's an important point I want to make about balancing your time, your energy, and your priorities. You will always need to plan around the most critical of these three. By this, I mean, if your energy is temporarily or permanently low because of health conditions, then your low energy is the pivot around which all the balancing moves. If your time is the least abundant because of temporary or permanent time demands, like a full-time job or raising kids, or a cat sitting job, or a tennis tournament, then your limited time is the pivot point. If a huge list of competing priorities is your weak link, then this is what drives balancing the rest. You'll need to know which of the three legs of the stool is the most precarious and use that to help you allocate your focus. If you're feeling like all of your priorities are competing for the number one spot, then you've got some thinking to do. Think of a project priority first. We're talking about decluttering project here. What part of the project will give you the most satisfaction to get it done? What will improve your daily life by getting it fixed? What will lessen the tension in relationships at home once you get it done? The answer to those questions will help you decide what to concentrate your efforts on first. Notice your other non-decluttering priorities too, and see first if some of them can take a back seat for a while, or if they really need to stay up front in terms of priority. Your job takes priority since that's how you get paid. Got to keep getting paid. Your children are priority in the sense that you have to keep them alive and fed and clean and in school. So managing the kids is certainly a priority that never lessens. Your spouse expects some attention too. You need to get enough sleep. You need to eat food that works to fuel your body and your efforts. In other words, not junk food. Your favorite relaxing hobby wants time also. And so what of these priorities can be shuffled around or shortened or put on hold in the short term or strategically planned to coincide with a holiday or vacation so that you can insert some time towards a decluttering project now? That's how you get to choose among all of your priorities. Now, let's talk about your time and how you can allocate it. Clearing a backlog takes an investment of time, and that's more than a weekend. You're not likely to get anything completed in a weekend. If that were possible, you'd have already done it that way. The truth is, it's going to take way longer than that, and the sooner you start chipping away at it, the better. You'll totally run out of steam before that imaginary horrendous weekend is completed, and the job won't be done either. Cultivating new habits can be done one stair step at a time. No need to change everything at once. So just add one new sustainable habit, like opening the mail every day as you get it and throw out the junk mail, and master that process before you add another habit, like changing how and when you shop online. The idea being, if you're trying to add new habits to affect how clutter accumulates in your house, you don't have to change them all at once. You can change them one at a time, one step at a time, one stair at a time, until you get all the habits changed that you want. Decide how much time you're willing to give to the ongoing project of decluttering in some form every week. On the presumption that, of course, the decluttering is going to take more than a weekend. It's going to take some endless amount of time that you have to work on it. So you get to decide how much time you're willing to give every week. Since it's not going to get done in a week, then you get to decide what amount of time you're going to put towards that project. And here's some considerations. If you're retired and your day is your own, you can allocate more time to this project. If you're working full-time and managing kids, that means you've got a lot less available time to hit it with big chunks of hours. So you're not going to have a whole weekend where you're free because you got way too much about the family and your job to worry about. You're going to allocate instead a half an hour or an hour a day to some part of the work you want done. Even with this restricted amount of time, a little bit sometime during every day will add up to big changes over the long term. And we've talked about that often, that we discount 15 minutes a day for a month, how much time you will have actually put in by the time you get to the end of the month. If you've got a tennis tournament over a long weekend, and that's a temporary allocation of your time, and you're going to be out of the house 10 hours a day, it's not likely that you'll have a bunch of free time to spend on decluttering. So a temporary demand will press the pause button on decluttering. The last leg of the stool to consider is, what about your energy levels? What reservoir of energy and physical capacity do you have to work with? The amount of time you can spend each day may be affected by your physical condition. If you're sick in the short term, or you're being treated for a chronic or a long-term illness, then the work flows more slowly and is attached to the speed that you can move. Even so, again, small, consistent work adds up to big change over time. If you're temporarily physically compromised, like you have a twisted ankle or you had knee surgery, such that you can't move a lot of things yourself, that will certainly impact your ability to execute. But while you're temporarily sidelined, you can find some smaller organizing jobs to work on, like sorting your photographs or going through old mail or old files. You can also call in some help to work on things while you're sidelined. If you're more permanently physically compromised, and that has affected your ability to move things around yourself, then you're going to need outside help, and coordinating your time with that help and when they're available becomes a big part of the job for you. Most important about energy levels is taking care of yourself. Either doing a bit of work stretches you and helps you rebuild your energy, or it drains you to a point that it's hard to recover easily. As you attempt to add in decluttering work to your daily energy expenditures, pay attention to how you recover afterwards and adjust the amount of time you spend either up or down, depending on the after effects. We don't want you burning yourself out. And so if you get all excited and work too long and then drain yourself, you need to recognize that your ability to stay focused and not overload yourself is shorter than you thought, and do a little bit less time next time. Or maybe you can split it up so that you want to get an hour done a day, but you really can only do a half an hour and still recover well. So maybe you do a half an hour in the morning and a half an hour in the afternoon in order to break it up and still get that hour of the day. But that is a way that accommodates your energy level and how you can spend it and recover. So that's the kind of things we're talking about here. This balancing of those three pieces, what your priorities are, what your energy level is, what your time frame available free time is something that it shifts and changes over time. And so you will constantly need to be reevaluating. Do I have free time this week? I'll just tell you, no, this week I have no free time. So none of those projects in the house are happening. There's nothing I can do about that. But next week I have a little bit more time. So when the cat sitting job is done, then I get a little bit more of my evening back, and then I can do some of the other things that are on my list. So right now, some of my stuff is paused, and it's going to change every week, and it might change every day. So we're going to talk about this in terms of the tittle this week. Do your evaluation, decide what you have time for, decide what your energy level is and what your priorities are. And then you're going to need to go back and reevaluate regularly to find out how that target is shifting and changing. And there will be time for you to work on the project, and you just have to be clear about how much time there is today or this week versus next week and what was available last week.
You could beat yourself up about not getting the vacuuming done or whatever is on your household to-do list, but there's nothing to be gained from it. And so you have to just give yourself permission and be okay with, this week not getting anything done around the house, and that's how it is.
It just has to wait.
That's just how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, my own example of that is I have all these things that I try to do a little of every day. I try to write every day. I try to work on what I call financial fitness every day, which is business paperwork, personal finances. It's something that it's much better to chip away at it than to spend massive long hours, for me.
Drowning in updating financial paperwork.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I also recognize that Tuesday rolls around and we have a busy morning preparing for this, and then there's video editing and all the follow-up to do to get it published on YouTube and all of that. And I just have recognized that it has to be okay that I don't get anything done on financial fitness on Tuesdays. Just can't happen.
Right? Because you have to allocate, 6 hours to the Clutter Fairy on Tuesdays. And that makes perfect sense. So you add it into the other days when you don't have that commitment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Susan says, being retired, I often find that I tend to waste more time and am less efficient on accomplishing tasks.
Yeah, relaxing is so much fun. So maybe you can reintroduce the idea of a structure. Part of what happens to get people in motion when they're going to work every day and they have a schedule to keep. And so maybe you can create an artificial schedule for yourself that you're going to relax in the morning until such and such time. And then you have to get up and do an hour here or an hour and a half. And then you have a lunch break, and create a fake schedule and set alarms to go with it and try to sit on that schedule and see if that helps you do it. I could sit on the couch and, scroll through my phone or watch television or whatever. I would love to do that. Netflix. I would love to do that right now. I'm dying to have that amount of time right now, and I don't have it, and I'm sad. But well, if your priority is to relax, that's one thing. But if your priority is to declutter, then it changes how you're going to spend your time, and scheduling for it is a way to get yourself in motion again.
Well, and I would also suggest one way to think about it might be to consider your retirement a form of self-employment.
And great idea.
When I was first self-employed, I tell people all the time, I think it probably took me 2 years to develop a discipline around self-employment, because I started out just knowing that, well, now I work at home and I don't have a boss to report to. And I didn't fall into I'll just sit on the couch and watch TV for hours at a time, but I got crazy about cooking and housework, and the house was impeccable and there were wonderful home cooked meals every day, and I wasn't really
working
very hard. Not on the work thing. And if all of your needs are being met and your clutter is not threatening your health and well-being, that's probably okay. But if your clutter is bothering you for some reason, then turn it into your part-time job.
Right. Well, and I use that metaphor about moving as well. People somehow think they're going to wedge packing for a move in amongst their completely busy day and full-time work. Like it's going to, take a few hours to pack up their house. And it's like, That is not, this is your full-time job for the next month or 2 months or 3 months. And if you are working 70 hours a week, then it's going to be your full-time job for 6 months trying to get packed before you move. Like, you don't have enough time in the day to do the needful hours that it takes to do this job. And so if you imagine that this is your new part-time gig to be a stay-at-home declutterer, then you can set some job hours where you go to work at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whatever your preferred work time is. And, you know, you don't have to work 8 hours a day like you used to, but you can certainly work 2 hours a day, and making that, you know, imagining that it really is a job. I mean, those of you that have been trying and not accomplishing your decluttering know that there's many, many hours of work that needs to be done. And that's part of why you're so overwhelmed. So treating it like it's a job and working on the job a little bit, go team, go. It's a great metaphor. It's a great way to think about it. And you're just going to go to work, and you just don't have to go out of the house to go to work. But it's also like you can make going out of the house part of it, because if you collect stuff and you make your donation piles and you go put it in the car, then part of your job today is to go to Goodwill or go to your favorite charity and drop off the donations, or go to the electronic recycling and recycle the dead electronics, or whatever those tasks are. That's just your new job. And so you can just dial it in. Like 2 days a week, you drive and you go run decluttering related errands. And that's part of your job.
Deborah said, my physical energy is highest in the morning, but my mental energy is between 3 to 6 p.m.
Interesting. So then you can do some sorting things. If you think of the job as sorting and decision making, you can sort in the morning when you have the physical energy and you're not making decisions, you're just categorizing, right? I want this, I don't want it, or this is all of my makeup, or this is all of my pantry goods, or whatever.
CJ was way ahead of you on this one. CJ said, Deborah, maybe sort like with like in the morning and place in one area physical work, and then make decisions in the afternoon. Mental work.
Exactly.
See, we've trained these people so well, they don't even need you anymore.
There you go. Right. I could stop prepping and y'all can just start doing this show. That would be awesome. That would free up my time a little bit, wouldn't it? That's great. And exactly, like, adjust the work for when your mind is firing, right? Yeah. Good job.
Rowan added, one thing that helps me is to make a list of small steps in my project, which strikes me as kind of a getting things done approach, because sometimes you define a project and it sounds like it's a next action using, getting things done terms, but it's not. It's a project. It's too big, and you need to break it into what's the very next thing, and then what is the next thing after that, and the next thing after that.
Yeah. And this is a barrier to productivity across all disciplines. The idea that you don't know all of the steps, therefore you can't start the first one. And it is something that stalls people all around. So even if you don't know what the 7th and 8th and 12th steps are, if you can figure out what the next step is, then later on, the further steps will present themselves and become clear to you. But in the moment right now, you don't, even if you make a list of the steps and you can't get all the way to the end, you have a few more to go. You can do the next ones right now. And then maybe you got to consult and get some help, or maybe you have to ask somebody what they think should be the next thing to happen. And I do that a lot on the virtual calls when people have me spend an hour with them in their camera and they walk around and show me the projects. A lot of times I just am setting priorities for them. Well, I think you need to do this first and then do that. And like, I can look at the project and conceive of all the pieces and then start telling them all the steps they need to take. And sometimes that's the skill that I'm bringing to the call.
Tammy said, my priority system is what's the hottest fire first. And what that makes me think of is I don't know if this was a getting things done thing or something that came from another productivity or time management workshop, but about the matrix of important and urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And the hottest fire may actually be urgent but not important, which is, feels urgent, which I think is why it's important to step back and take a little time to consider what should be your highest priority, not what feels right at this moment like your highest priority.
What feels like a fire may be a fire imposed by someone else. Maybe their deadline, maybe that's not important, right? But you do have to ask yourself, if I don't do this now, according to the deadline, according to the urgency, what's going to happen? And maybe the result of not doing something isn't as bad as you think. And sometimes we have so many urgent things that all you can do is pour water on the fire that's burning the hottest and move on to the next one. But you do have to evaluate as you go. Are you watering fires that are your fires, or are they somebody else's fire? And so trying to evaluate if the place where you're focusing your attention is really going to serve me. Is it going to get results that I need? Is it going to solve a problem that I need help with or not?
It was very liberating for me when I learned that I could call a client and say, I know I promised I was going to have this for you tomorrow, but I can't do it. And it's going to be Friday. Will that still be okay with you? And they almost always say yes, because there really aren't that many printing and web design emergencies. It's hardly ever a matter of life and death.
And you make the point that missing a deadline without warning is way worse than deciding you're going to miss the deadline and letting people know. Because if you can say to somebody, I do this all the time when I'm going to clients, if I get stuck in traffic or something's happening, I'm going to be 10 minutes late, 15 minutes late. I can tell there's a wreck. I got caught by the train, whatever. I don't leave them sitting at their house wondering the appointment time is at 2 and I'm not there at 2:05 and I'm not there 2:10, and they start to twitch and wonder what happened. As soon as I know I'm going to be late, I send them a message and say, I'm going to be 15 minutes late. I'm going to be 10 minutes late, so that they can let it go immediately. They don't have to worry about it. Now they know I'm not going to come until 2:10 or 2:15, and then they'll start looking for me until then. And so it allows the other person to relax and react and replan based on what you've said or done. So maybe the urgent fire is one that just needs to be renegotiated. Like, that deadline isn't going to work for me. And I'm going to tell you way in advance so that we can work out something that is mutually agreeable to both of us to shift and change this.
Yeah.
It's very important that the person that is waiting on something gets your warning early in enough time to cope and adjust.
Okay, we've hinted at the tittle a couple of times. Let's go ahead and get to the tittle.
Okay, so this week's tittle is called A Balancing Act. And the assignment is to examine the factors in your life that contribute to a feeling of balance or a lack thereof. So you want to assemble a list of the organizing projects that are making the most noise in your head, plus a few non-decluttering projects or priorities that demand your attention the most. And then go through a ranking process. Rank the items on your list according to which will potentially give you the most satisfaction, free up the most time or energy for other purposes, and contribute the most to the achievement of other priorities on the list. Next, you want to rank the items according to which seem likely to require the smallest time commitment, the least expenditure of energy, and the smallest new habit to cultivate. Add up all the scores you've assigned to each item, and then use that to make a plan and a schedule to work on the items with the highest score. So let me just make a side note here that we don't want to turn this assignment into a math homework project. So feel free to use any numeric ranking system that makes sense to you. You can give them 1 to 5 stars. You can score them 1 to 10. Whatever works for you. If you just want to say A, B, and C, anything that makes sense to you will work for the purposes of the exercise. We're just trying to get you to say, this one's more important than that one. This one's more important than that one. Then we encourage you to revisit this exercise again in a few weeks to check whether any of the rankings or have changed or any of the conclusions need adjustment. It isn't about making long-term life choices here. It's about checking in with yourself right now about what feels the most useful and the most important in your life, what needs your energy and attention the most, and whether you have it to give in this moment or not. That's what we're trying to get to. So do that little ranking system, use it to work on something and see how it goes. Come back and tell us about it.
Linda says, I had a hard time starting organizing a room due to overwhelm. I started working 5 minutes at a time, some days only handling one item.
There you
I
go.
gradually upped the time to 15 minutes. After a few days, I had a boost of inspiration and energy, and I worked for 2 hours and made huge progress. It took that long. It took that long to get a vision together and make some decisions about some hard to part with items. And I'm reminded of the aphorism that Deborah has shared with us a couple of times about motivation following action.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this also reminds me of, we talked a few weeks ago about the Fogg behavior model.
Yes, Dr. Fogg.
And how, if something is hard and you're not feeling motivated to do it, you're never going to get it done. It's below the line. But if you get a little practice, keep after it, that 5 minutes, doing that 5-minute exercise every day flexes your organizing, your decision-making muscle, and you get a little stronger. And so you're moving yourself to the, from the hard to do to easier to do end of the spectrum. You'll have you're building a little capacity.
And it's sort of like a train starting on the track, right? When the train leaves the station, it goes slow. It takes a while to get the momentum going to make the train roll on down the track. And so if you're feeling super overwhelmed, you're just sort of the train stuck at the station at the moment. And those 5 minutes a day is you slowly turning the wheels until you could get yourself going better. And that's awesome. If that's the best process for you to get in motivation and get going, whatever, it doesn't matter that you spent 5 minutes at a time in there, because ultimately you spent 5 minutes for several days plus 2 hours. And you made a big chunk and big headway. And so good for you. And never in the world of the Clutter Fairy, everything counts, right?
Darn right.
If you do 5 minutes a day, that's 5 minutes more than you did yesterday. And you still got that one piece of paper handled or that one thing of trash out of the room. And so there you go. It's better than before. Something is better than nothing. Like in our environment, the only reason that time matters is because it's just how much time you have to give towards it and whether you arrive at the end result that you want. And so you can manage that time and stretch it out or speed it up however you need to stay on the project and to keep making forward motion. And eventually it'll be something that's less stressful for you to tackle than before. There you go.
Rowan said the list helps to be able to make progress even in tiny steps. And she added, also the steps may change along the way, which is a very good point. And why you shouldn't really, don't agonize over knowing what all 50 steps are on your big project, because you may get 6 steps in and realize, oh, turns out steps 40 through 50 were not necessary.
I don't care about them anymore, right?
Yeah. Your priorities may change, or or in the process of doing those first few little things, you may discover a new technique, a new technology, a new helper,
a new pile,
a new resource, a new outlet, a new place to donate things.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes the project easier.
it's always going to be, I mean, this happens to me when I go and work with people. Like sometimes I dig into an area and I uncover something. And it's like, okay, so I had a list of these 6 steps in my head about how I was going to tackle this space. And then I dig into the bottom of the closet and I find something else. And that makes me make a right turn. And now I think we should do it in this order instead. Like what you find and what you do will constantly readjust your path. That's okay. It doesn't matter. The only reason that to imagine it up front and to think about the steps is to help you make your choices and not be overwhelmed and to be able to do something. And so however you get that list, however you keep those steps and however you modify them is all fine. Because the ultimate goal here is you're just trying to make the house into something that you like better. You're just trying to get through the stuff so that you don't feel overwhelmed anymore and you feel comfortable in it and you're happy where you are. And so whatever works in service to that is exactly right. That's the bottom line.
I want to make one brief announcement and then we'll get back to some more comments. And that is to remind those who are with us live that we also have a YouTube channel for anyone who wasn't aware of that, with about 200 videos on a wide variety of organizing topics. Visit cfhou.com/YouTube.
Ta-da.
Subscribe to our channel on YouTube and click the bell icon next to the subscribe button if you'd like to get notifications when we post new content. And we're slowly but surely working on putting old videos into playlists by topic. So right now there are some playlists that only have like one video in them, but bear with us. We will eventually categorize them all. And I think that people are finding that helpful. Samudra shared this comment. It took me a long time to learn the difference between urgent and important, but even after figuring it out, I sometimes just go for the urgent fun. And urgent fun is always going to trump important, boring stuff.
Right. Well, and I think decluttering is fun. And so for me, diving into somebody's stuff is, entertainment, but you probably don't feel the same way about it. And so sorry, it's only more fun if you get somebody to do it with you, or you're able to do enough that you feel some relief, and then it feels more fun to you because you've accomplished something. And there's always more fun. It's fun always will draw our attention away if we let it. Sorry about that.
Leslie said, I started with sorting like with like from miscellaneous boxes while down with a back injury.
Oh.
Then I did a bedroom that is no longer occupied, then kitchen as back healed. Now garage is priority because I don't want to declutter in there in July in Houston.
No, you do not.
So as you're thinking about the tittle this week, as you're thinking about your priorities and your time and what's the third thing I already forgot?
Oh, energy.
Energy. Thank you. I'm running out of steam, so I forgot energy.
Right.
You also need to take into account the future weather and
the planning
and what time of day you do the best work.
Well, and that this weekend is coming another cold front, so it's going to be a little cooler. So this weekend would probably be a good one to put some time in and see if you can't make some dents. Garages are never done in a day. You do not want to pull out everything and then get to the end of the day and it's all sitting on the driveway. You got to put it all back. So you only want to do a portion of it at a time. So go and focus in a corner, divide the garage up into quadrants, focus on the left side only, or the right side, the front or the back, whatever you need to do to divvy it up, and stay in one area and work on one area into completion. That way you don't drag the whole thing out and then realize it's 4:00 in the afternoon and now you got to put it all back. So it's not on the driveway overnight. So manage your time around the garage to give you the ability to work in an area, put things out in the driveway and put it back before you run out of steam. That's the most important thing. And then come back to it the next day.
One further announcement that we need to make is that daylight savings time begins this Sunday in the United States. So to those who are watching us from places where daylight savings does not start until the end of March, we apologize that we will be off by
Jacking
an
you
hour
up.
for the next few weeks, and I can never remember which direction it is, and I hope someone will chime in and say what that does to.
We are springing forward, so
we are springing forward. Yeah.
Yes. So we will get to 12 o'clock earlier by an hour than we have been.
Thank you.
That's where we're going.
I get so confused. I don't know why.
I know, right?
Usually not that stupid, but daylight saving and
then after the couple of weeks, then everybody also adjusts, and then we're back in sync again. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Sorry, we're going to be out of we're going to be off kilter for a few weeks.
Okay. I want to remind everyone we'll be back next week, Tuesday, March 15th at noon U.S. Central Daylight Savings Time, live in Zoom and streaming on Facebook. Cluttered space impacts and complicates every other aspect of our lives: our physical fitness, emotional health, productivity, family, financial well-being, happiness, you name it. In our next episode, we'll reframe decluttering as a form of self-care and offer tips for supporting your most important organizing helper, you. Join us March 15th for Because You're Worth It, Decluttering as Self-Care. If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us this week. I hope you have fun trying to balance your competing priorities and all of your energy and time, and come back and tell us how it went. We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.